A Texas judge finds that the National Rifle Association is not operating in good faith. We talked to CSGV Executive Director Josh Horwitz about the NRA's latest legal problems and what it means for the once powerful gun lobby organization. Right now on CSGV at Home. Hello and welcome to CSGV at Home. My name is Andrew Patrick. I'm the Director of Political Communications at the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. I want to thank you for watching. Today, we're lucky to be joined by our Executive Director, Josh Horwitz. Josh, thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a great show. I watch it all the time.
Yeah. So happy birthday, happy belated birthday. And you got a fairly nice birthday gift yesterday from Judge Harlan Hale in Dallas, Texas. So the backstory here is the New York Attorney General Tish James was bringing a lawsuit against the National Rifle Association for corruption, abuse of finances, kind of a general corruption lawsuit. They attempted to skirt the lawsuit by declaring bankruptcy, moving to Texas, because nothing says stand and fight like tucking your tails and running. This judge yesterday said that their filing of bankruptcy was not in good faith, and said the lawsuit's going to continue. The Attorney General said she's going to continue holding the NRA accountable. What's your take on this, and what do you think it means generally?
I think, let me just give it a little bit of framing. So the reason the NRA is incorporated in New York, even though they've actually been in Virginia for many years. So the Attorney General of New York, Tish James, has authority over their nonprofit status and can regulate them. And so that's why it's not just the state of New York happens to sue the NRA. It's that the NRA is actually a New York nonprofit, and it's the Attorney General's job of New York to review that status and make sure that they are within what nonprofits do. The NRA is like a nonprofit like no other, in that it's just a big piggy bank for its executives. So let's just start with that, and that's why Tish James is reviewing their nonprofit status and seeking dissolution, because they're essentially just a for-profit, but for a very small amount of people who run for the NRA, right? So the bottom line here is that the NRA wants to get out of the jurisdiction of Tish James, the New York State Attorney General. So they want to move to Texas and reincorporate. They've used the bankruptcy as sort of a facade to get there. So they'll file bankruptcy in Texas, they want to get rid of the New York State lawsuit, and they want to reincorporate in Texas, where the regulatory environment will allow cheaters and scoundrels to survive, right? Where in New York, they finally said, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. So what the judge in effect said yesterday is, this isn't a real bankruptcy. You have the assets to meet your obligations, and therefore we are not going to play ball with you and allow you to use the federal bankruptcy protections to get out of your obligations as a nonprofit in New York State. So that's sort of what happened yesterday. And it's not surprising that a federal judge would look at the NRA and say, you're acting in bad faith, because the NRA acts in bad faith to everybody, not just to their regulators, but the biggest ripoff is to their donors, right? This is all about their members who are paying lots of money so that Wayne LaPierre can live a lavish lifestyle and pay, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 million dollars to his outside law firm, lawyer Bill Brewer, to keep him in control of the NRA and out of jail. So if you donate to the NRA today, you're basically it's Wayne LaPierre's get out of jail. That's what it's all about. It has nothing to do with gun rights anymore. All the money is going in to pay these attorneys and to save Wayne LaPierre's skin. And the way Wayne LaPierre's maintain control is that there's a board of directors at the NRA who he's all helped get elected through his own slush funds to help them get reelected. So they're very beholden to him, so they won't get rid of him. In any other nonprofit, in the nonprofit that we work in, our board of directors would have kicked us out, sent us down the highway a long time ago. But you've got to realize this is all about money and greed and corruption. And the bankruptcy court in Texas said, we're not going to be part of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been doing this for 30 years. We've been on opposite sides of the table from the NRA since we started in 1974. It's a longstanding organization, is this the weakest point that you've seen them at, both politically and also like just public opinion?
So I think they're weak in two fronts. So their response after Columbine, I'm sorry, the response after Columbine, but no, the response after when we saw the terrible shooting at Sandy Hook, they were pretty weak after that moment when LaPierre came out with this ridiculous speech about the NRA is going to participate in school safety, which we knew was just a lie then. But they were able to manage to keep some semblance of their power with some members of Congress, and a number of prevention laws did not go forward in 2013. But in retrospect, and especially now, it's really the gun rights agenda is independent of the NRA now. The NRA is, maybe people want to give it money for reasons I have no idea, but as far as gun rights politics, the NRA is incredibly weak right now because they're morally bankrupt. And because everybody knows they're ripping off their members, and they're just not in a position to spend money like they used to be. So they used to spend a lot more money on politics. Now all the money goes to pay for Wayne LaPierre's legal bills. So we have a morally bankrupt organization and a not quite financially bankrupt organization, as the court said in Texas, but their finances are being diverted to pay for legal bills and not for politics. So as an organization, the NRA is, I think, as absolutely as weak as they've ever been. Now, do not mistake that, though, for an idea that there's not other groups that are filling the void, that, on the far right, that gun rights does motivate people. So we need to remember that. But as an organization, it's totally shifted.
This Frankenstein that they've created, these domestic terror groups, these quote unquote militia groups, a lot of which were a part of the insurrectionists on the Capitol. So, and they've been armed by the NRA. They lack the financial and the lobbying side of it, but they kind of have this brute strength machoism. Those with the guns make the rules that has been perpetuated by the NRA for years.
Right. Well, look, the NRA created the insurrectionary idea, right? They created the idea that the Second Amendment had an individual right to fight tyranny, not a state right to fight federal tyranny, but an individual right to fight federal tyranny. And they talked about it, and they sold guns, and they made the federal government into a monster, and they completely lost control of that. So now you have, from QAnon to the Proud Boys to the Boogaloo Boys and all the other stuff, to the Three Percenters and the Oath Keepers, and the far, the citizens and the Gun Owners of America and these other groups, which were only too happy to run with that sort of ideology. It's got completely out of control. The NRA doesn't control that anymore, but it is on the right, a potent force in politics. I mean, we are discussing this, in the minutes after Liz Cheney was ousted from Republican leadership. So there's no sort of rationality there in all in this. Now, the rest of us, and I know a lot of folks who of course looked at the insurrection of the Capitol and were completely aghast at that. But that's the far right now. That's the gun rights crowd there. And we haven't talked too much about this, but because of DC's gun laws, they were armed, but they weren't carrying assault weapons, which they normally do, this group, when they come to other state capitals. I think the news was they were holding the more heavy weaponry in Virginia while the insurrection was going on, right? But that's the energy in the gun rights world right now. It's a very insurrectionary, anti-government, and very closely linked with white nationalism and white supremacy. Now, let me be clear about one thing. We are not talking about average gun owners. Average gun owners were actually never a big part of the NRA. Think about, the NRA at their heyday probably had maybe 4.5 million people as members. There's 10 times that many gun owners in America, maybe 20 times that many gun owners in America. Yeah, by 20 times, maybe more, but they're not part of the NRA. So I'm not talking about individual gun owners. There's a lot of course, individual gun owners who support a lot of things, Andrew, that we support, like background checks. But the energy on the right now, the energy in the gun rights movement is in the insurrectionary, white supremacist,
QAnon.
The QAnon part of that movement, and the NRA has completely lost control of that. And obviously that's having some effect on the Republican Party. Like what we used to think of as like the new Republican Party, what we used to think of Republican Party as believing in the rule of law and things like that, that's gone. And I think that's because of the energy from these far right groups who show up in primaries.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. So moving forward, what influence is the NRA going to happen? What's going to happen with this group, with Wayne?
I think Wayne will eventually be forced out. I think if there's any hope of saving the NRA, and I'm not saying that's a hope I share, but if their members have any hope of saving the NRA, Wayne LaPierre has to go, and they're going to have to make amends both with the IRS and with the New York State Attorney General. So it will be a very different organization, it's unclear to me what the leadership structure will look like. There are clearly dissident board members right now who are unhappy with Wayne, but he still controls that organization. My guess is, it will splinter into some lots and lots of infighting. And the question is, I think Wayne will be forced out. I think it will splinter into lots of infighting. Can it be saved to be anything like it was when I started, which was, at least the patina of large membership, patriotic, all that, that kind of the symbolism, right, of eagles and freedom and patriot, right,
and it's still a pillar of the conservative movement.
Yeah,
you have Grover Norquist, and then you had the NRA, and you had it was very much of the infrastructure of what we used to know as the Republican Party. Now it's kind of like
well, right. I mean, David Keene, who's the head of the American Conservative Union, used to be the president of the NRA. Right, so it was really intertwined with, center right within the Republican Party. Now it's just gone. The view, what's happened in the Republican Party, and the NRA's gone, maybe even led part of that, as I mentioned, is something that we just don't recognize right now. So it's unclear where the NRA emerges as sort of that power broker. When I wrote my book, Guns, Democracy, and Insurrectionist Idea in 2009, the NRA was the center of that right-wing power. Now, because of self-inflicted wounds, they've just lost that centrality in the movement, and the movement is moved to a different place, a place that makes the Republican Party even 10 years ago completely unrecognizable today.
Well, on the other side of things, the gun violence prevention movement seems pretty healthy, strong, and united right now. And we're going to keep fighting. So, Josh, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. We're going to continue to watch this. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. So,
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, bye.